Welcome to Church and State, a program where we discuss important public issues from a biblical worldview and help you to shine your light in the public square. I'm your host, Dave Pellowe, and we're recording today in front of a live studio audience. A few weeks ago, a lady from Queensland told a significant part of her personal story in the Courier Mail newspaper under the heading, "Too Easy, How I Almost Killed My Own Daughter." But first, a fair warning. Although we'll be careful with this topic, it does contain adult concepts that may not be suitable for young ears. Stacey found herself unexpectedly pregnant at just 16 years old. Her story is not rare, and today we will navigate and examine the areas in which we as a society and community can do better to support women who find themselves in such incredibly difficult situations. Whether it's teen pregnancy, family honour, career pressure, intimate partner abuse, or a myriad of other reasons, let's find out and understand what real choices and support expectant mothers are offered. The fact is, 1 in 3 women over the age of 40 in Australia have had an abortion. What effect, both financially and emotionally, is this having on our society? Does real choice exist? Are there sufficient safety nets to protect pregnant women, their partners, extended family, and the unborn child that would provide optimal care and protection? As the voting public, our role is not only to use our vote to advocate against injustice and appoint political candidates to do good, but we should also change our posture and work proactively with government and within the framework of existing legislation and policy to see better outcomes. To help us think through this together and get better informed, I'm joined by Stacey McBride Wilson to share her lived experience with us, as well as Jeanette Harris from Emily's Voice, an organisation supporting women and seeking to positively create a culture of life with respectful, empowering information campaigns. Thanks for joining us again, Stacey. Now, your story was in the Courier Mail recently, and it's quite a profound story and something that I guess a lot of people can relate to. Would you mind just going over that, recap the details of that again for the audience?
Sure. So I found myself pregnant at 16, which was quite a shock and very unexpected for myself, my family, people who knew me. And so when I found out that I was actually pregnant, scared, and a 16-year-old girl, I just wanted that to be over and done with and get rid of this problem that I was faced with. And so I decided to pursue an abortion, and that was the course of action I decided to take. But at the last moment, I actually had a change of mind and change of heart, and now I'm a proud mum of a 14-year-old girl.
That's beautiful. And Jeanette, thank you for joining us again today.
Thanks for having me.
And you're from Emily's Voice. Tell me about your role and tell me about Emily's Voice, what it does in this space as well.
Okay, so I'm the Marketing and Advocacy Manager at Emily's Voice, and we help Australians to fall in love with the unborn. So we also help to support mums and to change culture. So we produce beautiful, hope-filled media campaigns to try and change culture.
And they really are beautiful campaigns.
Thank you.
I'm impressed at how well you can tell a story and convey the emotion and the personal impact in the space it takes to do a TV ad. Are they all true?
They're all true stories,
wow.
Yes. We've discovered them all along the way. And what we find is that it's the true stories, the real stories that really resonate with people. Yes, it's full of lots of information. So that's for our supporter base. We actually have 2 brands. We have Emily's Voice, which is for people who are thinking that they're pro-life or they already are pro-life and they want to know more. And then we have the Not Born Yet brand, which is for the abortion vulnerable. So at that point, when somebody is considering abortion, we hope that they will find us and they will get the 360-degree view, if you like, of what's involved in an abortion, all the risks, everything to do with it.
So it's really about empowering women in particular, but the community in general with facts, evidence, truth,
yes.
and understanding.
Yes, very much so. Whether it's the supporter side or whether it's the person who's seeking the abortion. It's very much about inspiring, educating, and hopefully directing them to the point where they actually feel like they've considered all options, and then hopefully they'll actually choose life.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll come back to you again in just a moment, but if we can maybe just explore some of the details of your story a little bit more.
Sure. So for me, finding myself pregnant at 16, that's not really what anyone hopes for themselves or any parent would hope for their child. So that was just, a complete shock and absolutely shattered my world and what I believed was going to be my path from there on out. I just wanted to make the problem disappear. And for me, the only option that I knew that would do that was abortion.
Yeah. And how equipped do you think a 16-year-old is to make that decision by herself?
Totally not prepared or equipped at all. And so for me at that stage of life, Google was a very new thing, the internet was a very new thing, but I still knew that you could jump on and you could research. And for me, the only options that came up were abortion. There wasn't anything like what Jeanette was talking about with Not Born Yet or with Emily's Voice. So it was all abortion, abortion, abortion. So that I saw that as my only course of action. And so a scared girl makes a phone call and a receptionist says, sure, we can fit you in 3 days' time. For me, that was just like, oh, great, answered prayer. This will completely solve all my problems.
And so what kind of counselling did you get from government services or abortion providers?
Absolutely none. So I didn't even see my doctor.
At 16?
No, I had spoken to the school nurse and she had encouraged me. She'd sort of heard my, situation and heard that I thought abortion was a good option, and she just went, okay, well, if that's what you think, that's, how can we make this happen? I'd spoken to my boyfriend and he was very much feeling the same as me, scared, and let's get this done. Let's get something that's going to just completely mean we can continue with our life that we had thought of was going to continue. And so there was no other suggestions around me to suggest an alternative but abortion.
That's it's terrible. I mean, I can imagine how tempting it is for a couple of 16-year-olds to look for, welcome the idea that their problem can be disappeared suddenly.
Exactly, yeah. And we didn't think about anything else. We didn't want to. It was just too overwhelming to consider having a baby at 16.
So what exactly put abortion in your head as a 16-year-old girl?
So that was really interesting. The year before I found myself pregnant, I'd actually done a legal studies assignment, and doing all the research there, all the information that I found had pointed to abortion being the solution if you were to find yourself in that situation. So for me, that really had a big influence upon my thinking around that issue, that situation, and that abortion was normal, that it was just something that people did. There was nothing to sort of overcomplicate, but this is just a normal course of action for someone who found themselves in a situation like I did.
So Stacey, I want you to just take a minute and walk me through what it was like for you as a 16-year-old at those final moments, the crunch before you actually changed your mind. What was happening in the room after the doctor walked you in?
Yeah, sure. So I remember really distinctly sitting in the waiting room and it being just so happy and bright, and feeling just this contrast of this is not a happy and bright place, and sitting there and feeling like it was a long time until it was my turn, and the doctor called me in and she just asked me some really generic questions and then did the scan and then just said, everything looks fine, are you ready to go? And I remember just that everything looks fine, something in me completely changed, because I felt like everything's not fine. I'm sitting here in this abortion clinic feeling just so overwhelmed and ashamed. And I said to her, can I see the scan? And she agreed, which is something that they never do.
Wow.
Because she'd actually said to me, I said to her, do you know if it's a boy or a girl? And she said yes. And I said to her, can I see the scan? And she agreed, which is something they never do. And so she turned the screen around and Katie was there, and I was 19 and a half weeks pregnant, and she was sucking her thumb in the image on the screen. And I just changed my mind in that moment. I thought, I cannot go through with this. Everything just changed for me in that moment. And I remember taking a deep breath and still having those thoughts of, well, I've come this far. I don't want to, disappoint my boyfriend. I don't think I have the courage to say to the doctor, I don't want to continue with it. But I just knew that looking at that screen, I couldn't continue on with the termination. And so I just took a deep breath and I said, I can't do this.
Now, you were in school You were 16 years old. Did the abortion clinic need your parents' permission, consent, or any involvement at all?
No, none at all.
It's incredibly easy.
It was way too easy, easier than I could have ever imagined, because I thought when I called up that they would have said, you know, your parents need to come with you or something. You know, bear in mind I'm a 16-year-old girl, so I needed my parents' permission to do everything, and yet I didn't need my parents' permission to book in for an abortion. And if they hadn't come with me to the clinic, I would have had it done and they would have been none the wiser.
Yeah, it must be a very common story. So you, I guess, have a romantic evening with your boyfriend at the time.
Yes.
And birth control failed?
Yes. So yeah, we had been using condoms and the condom broke, and then I thought, well, okay, if that happens, you just go and have the morning after pill, which I did, and that also failed.
Take me through the moments where you just were making the decision that you needed to make a decision, a choice, and how you broached that topic with your parents, and what your family environment was like at the time.
Yeah. So I had done a pregnancy test when I was around 8 weeks pregnant at the time, I'm guessing, and that had come up negative. And for me, that was such a relief, because I'd sort of had that nagging thought of maybe I am pregnant, and I just was feeling different. But there was a negative pregnancy test, and just being 16 and wanting to reassure myself that, okay, everything's fine because this little device has told me it's negative, I'm fine, I can just carry on with life.
It's the kind of things you hear of statistically, like maybe, probably, but failed condom, failed morning after pill, failed pregnancy test.
Yeah.
And then you're more than 2 months pregnant.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, all those things where it says, you know, there's a chance of this not working, of course, in your mind, you don't think, well, that's going to be me. You expect that's going to happen to someone else, but that obviously was me. And so it actually progressed much longer, and only when I felt my daughter moving inside of me, and I was 18 weeks pregnant rather, at that time, did I just go, oh my goodness, there is definitely something going on here. And I did a next pregnancy test, a second one, and that turned up positive. And by the time I sort of got a handle on that, I was 19 weeks pregnant.
Do you have any idea how often that happens? Are you 1 in a million?
I don't know. I don't know the statistics. I know that it's rare, but I know that people definitely do find themselves in those situations, and that's why I'm so passionate about this topic now, because like myself, at 19 weeks pregnant, then feeling, okay, well, I don't want to be in this situation, so what's the option for me? Well, abortion is still an option until 20 weeks at that time. So even though I could feel my daughter moving inside of me, I disconnected from that fact because I was so scared and so ashamed, and I just wanted that to be over and done with.
What about you, Jeanette? Do you know what the rate of unplanned pregnancies resulting from failed contraception is?
It's actually surprisingly high. So it's between 1/2 and 2/3 of all unplanned pregnancies would come from failed contraception. So you would think that people who find themselves with an unplanned pregnancy actually do it because they haven't taken any protection, but actually that's often not the case at all.
So what are the most common reasons for people seeking a termination of pregnancy?
Well, actually, 96% of all abortions happen for psychosocial reasons. So it can be somebody saying, I'm just not ready, I want my career, I've already got enough children, I haven't got the finances, things like that.
What that says to me is that we as a community could be doing a whole lot more to support women. Instead of just the one area that we're focusing on funding and promoting and providing, we could actually be doing more to alleviate those psychosocial reasons. What kind of figures are you aware of around that? Is there much support from the government other than funding termination of pregnancy?
Not really, actually. When you look at all the services that are available for women generally, which are government funded, they tend to be very pro-abortion. So from the minute somebody says that they've got an unplanned pregnancy, often the people closest to them, because of what society is saying and promoting, are actually promoting abortion. So whether it can be parents, not in your case, thankfully. Coercion is a really big issue. Often when you go to the GP, that's going to be
coercion from
the partner. It can be coercion from parents or grandparents as well.
Because of family shame.
Yes. and because they may actually not know what's involved in an abortion. We've got that old adage of, well, it's just a clump of cells.
So there'd be so many women who would just be genuinely unsupported by themselves.
Absolutely. And the first thing that we really need to encourage people to do is actually say congratulations.
Yeah.
If we said that to women who find themselves in that situation, then all of a sudden that's a really positive statement to surround them with. And we know that of the 70 to 100,000 abortions in Australia every year right now, 70% of those women would make a different choice.
Wow.
They actually would not go ahead with an abortion.
That's incredible.
It's a huge figure.
And I can speak into that because obviously I was 16, I was pregnant, I was in high school, and so I wanted to keep it really private. I didn't want anyone to know because I was so ashamed. But when we decided to continue with the pregnancy and that was the course of action we were going to take, I was met by nothing but support from our school, from our principal, my teachers, all my peers. So for me, it was totally emphasising what you're saying, Jeanette, even though my situation would be one of incredible shame and people being very, abortion would be the best thing because you want to go on with your life, you want to educate, you want all those things that women are wanting.
Yeah.
I was only met by support by people around me.
Something about your story was that you didn't get any counselling from the people booking you in for an abortion. Mm-hmm. Before you finally changed your mind, how far down the path had you gone without any kind of counselling at all from the abortion industry?
Oh, I could have gone through with the termination. I was in a clinic, I was there ready to have the termination. I went in and greeted the receptionist, she asked me to take a seat. I waited and then it was my turn. So I met the doctor who would have been performing the termination and she did the general sort of question, she did an initial scan and she just asked me, are you ready? And that was it. There was only, maybe 10 minutes of just questions asking me how far along I was and then, are you ready? So for
that was the counselling question. Were there any, are you being pressured into this? Do you understand what you're doing?
There would have been those questions, but in terms of actually giving someone that space to not be in a clinic, because I felt pressured, I felt like we'd already come to the clinic, I'd already come this far. How on earth could I change my mind when my boyfriend was in the waiting room, when I'd already chosen that this was going to happen? So there was already so much pressure that I hadn't really entertained, well, it's not too late.
Jeanette, doesn't it seem like a bit of a conflict of interest that the clinic that only gets paid when an abortion is successfully completed, isn't it a conflict of interest that they're the people helping the patient make a decision on whether or not they should go ahead?
Yes, I think so. I think what we really need is to have some independent counselling subsidised by the government. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. Pro-choice.
Exactly, which actually allowed girls and their partners to go in and have a period of time, a cooling off period, time to actually think about the ramifications of what they are actually about to do. Because you can go ahead with the abortion, but you can never get rid of the memory. So even though, like in your case, where you wanted this thing to disappear, actually it never would have. You would always had, and we've got so many stories of people who have actually gone through with their abortion, enormous numbers who have abortion regret afterwards, and they have the birthday of when their baby would have been born,
due date.
And they find it incredibly difficult to move forward. So yes, they need to have counselling and they need to have cooling off period.
And this is a really positive way that we can engage with government. There is an existing legal framework for abortions to occur, and without seeking to overturn that immediately, what we can work on, which is everybody should be able to agree as pro-woman, pro-empowerment, pro-genuine choice, is let's offer independent counselling. Let's offer a cooling off period like many European nations do. These are progressive jurisdictions. They're not trying to deny choice or any of that language around that, but they're offering more empowerment and more care and more safety nets than we are. This is a conversation that many politicians and bureaucrats would entertain because it's it's not radical or extreme, it's just caring and pro-women.
Except I think we're actually seeing the opposite happen at the moment,
Right.
with you know, one of the major parties coming out and saying if they are elected in the next federal election, that it will be open slather, that anybody can come in at any point in time into a public hospital and have your abortion there, and we know that's happening already, by the way. And it will be funded. It will be funded, and there will be a national there will be a national referral line for doctors. Obviously, particularly in Queensland, we have got abortion legal up to 22 weeks, and then up to birth, with the approval of 2 doctors. So if you've got that referral line, even if somebody has a conscientious objection, then they're going to have to refer it on, and it will get referred on until everybody will say yes. And that second doctor doesn't even have to have seen the patient. It can all happen over the phone as well. So we've got what's being promoted is the absolute opposite. You know, it's not 360
So where can we ask
care.
our local members, our politicians and candidates at election time, where can we ask them to direct funding that's a positive suggestion as opposed to a negative criticism of existing laws, something that, an easy conversation that anybody can have? Where can we say pour funding into?
I think one of the things that we can do is actually ask them to invest in sex education in schools. Currently,
they're already spending a lot of money on sex education in schools. It's very comprehensive and quite departing from factual education. What kind of changes would you like to see in the current curriculums?
Well, what I'm really thinking of, what I'm talking about is what actually happens with conception, embryology, so that children actually grow up understanding.
So Year 9 science.
So yeah, what actually happens, not just talking to them about contraception and assuming that they're going to go out and have sex. I mean, we know that it obviously happens, but actually educating them on a much wider scale, so that actually when they get to the point of adulthood, they have got that full view of what all the implications are.
What does it actually say, Stacey, about our education system, about the sex education that students are receiving, when you see university students who you'd think have completed at least high school education watch a video explaining what abortion procedures are, including the various stages, that first, second and third trimester abortions, what the fetus looks like, what the procedure looks like, not graphically, but just with medical animations. What does it actually say that there's a huge percentage of people who are shocked and horrified and completely oblivious before such a demonstration?
Yeah, and I think exactly like what you said, Jeanette, it really comes down to making that connection of that life is human. I think that there's so much disconnection from, oh, this is just a clump of cells, it's just, until it's born, it's not human. And that's completely false, it's a complete lie. So having that connection with teenagers, to make that connection rather than just contraception and the things they need to do, but actually making that connection with life, when does it start walking through? Because if I'd had that, I would have completely thought about my pregnancy differently, because I didn't have that connection, definitely, without a doubt. And even now when I share my story about Katie, and I talk about, it's really easy to make that connection with people and help them make that connection, because she's 14 now. So she's a person who has all these characteristics, who is, fully fledged human, who has passions and things that she's good at. But people don't make that connection when they're in utero. They're just like, oh, well, it's unseen, almost unthought of. Yeah. So helping people make that connection, and teenagers helping them make that connection, so that when they're encountering a situation like I did, it's not just, oh, the contraception failed and now I need this problem to be gotten rid of.
Like you're removing a mole.
Exactly. But actually this is a life, and what does that mean? And the graphicness of abortion, if that had been shown to me, I would have been horrified and completely thought about abortion differently, rather than this is my course of action I need to take.
It strikes me as suspicious that certain political agendas are opposed to education, to facts, to science. It's like, why are we protecting people from the truth? What's the agenda going on behind this?
Yeah, and being empowered with all that information, which is what we were saying before, being empowered with not just one side of the story, but every side of the story, so that you don't have abortion regret, so that you don't get years down the track and go, I wish I'd knew. And I'm sure Jeanette can say that there's so many women who have proceeded with an abortion and they just go, I wish I'd known. And they just weren't given all the information. And for me, that's such a tragedy. And for me, I could have been one of those statistics. I was so close, moments away from being one of those statistics. And it horrifies me that I just was so oblivious and had no idea what I was really about to step into.
And often when women go back to their GP further down the line, because we know from research that the incidence of depression and of suicide rates and all anxiety, all those things are extremely increased.
That's right.
The abortion question isn't actually even asked as part of going deeper in their history.
That's right.
What could be causing this? What's going on in your life? What's the environment you're in?
And if you've watched any TV at all, know you're meant to take a proper medical history before you try and help people.
But abortion isn't one of those questions. Have you ever had an abortion?
It's terrible oversight. But something the government should be doing for the health of society, for the fact that 1 in 3 women over 40 have had an abortion, we should be facilitating the health, the mental health, the emotional health of the women who are post-abortion to help them find the healing and the closure for this terrible moment in their life. Like if somebody has no regrets, well, great, but there's so many people that do, and they are the walking wounded.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to do better.
Yeah, we do. And we have stories even of people 30, 40 years down the line who have carried those stories.
Right.
Obviously their abortion, their pregnancy would have happened in a different time to ours, in a time where there was much more shame associated with it, where there was shame on having sex outside of marriage, all those things. And at that point in time, they have then carried that for 30 or 40 years down the time. But now we're living in a society where society is saying, no, it's okay. It's perfectly okay. It's just healthcare.
Yeah.
We're being told by politicians and even by healthcare, in people working in hospitals, that this is a healthcare option, and it's not. It's not.
But doesn't it seem like motherhood and other aspects of family health are severely neglected, especially when we're talking about this topic?
I definitely think so. So when we were talking about sexual education or health education in schools earlier, I think that actually educating boys and girls on their future roles in society is incredibly important. And I think what really happens is women get into their 20s, they've been geared up to have their career. Everything about education is about get the best grades you can, do as well as you can, be independent, go out there and get into the workforce. Yeah. And your 20s are actually the period in time when you are most fertile. A woman is most fertile. But we're telling them, don't have your children now. And if you do fall pregnant, you can have an abortion. And that's all okay. So obviously fertility levels drop off. Once you get beyond 30, they're at 15%. When you get to 35, they half again by the time you're 40. So then...
That really is dropping off a cliff, isn't it?
It really is dropping off a cliff. And then what we get to is people getting, women getting to that end of the life. The body clock really is ticking. I've got to get married. Or maybe I don't in this society. And then they're turning to IVF. So at both ends of the spectrum, if I were to be cynical, you've got abortion, which is a solution and it costs money. And then you've got IVF at the other end, which costs money as well. And it's not a good place to be.
And I can say that of being in high school. So one of the big things that was motivating, if you like, my abortion, choosing that course of action, was that I was about to finish year 12. I had very firmly in my sights that I was going to university, that I was going to take this choice of career. So motherhood hadn't factored into my thinking at that time. And so exactly like you said, Jeanette, that I hadn't even thought about motherhood as a career option or something that was seen as valuable. It was just go to university, get your degree, and then be this contributing member of society.
Or even as something that you just wanted to be part of your life, not to be necessarily a career mum. At some point, a lot of women, most women, want to have motherhood factored in.
And so that was what was driving me, a big part of it. So I totally agree of championing motherhood as something so valuable and integral for society.
Yeah. There may be a young lady watching at the moment who's just found she's pregnant unexpectedly. How much did motherhood change your life plans? For better, for worse? How much of a spanner did it throw into the works? How much has it improved or ruined your life?
Well, I think my initial thinking was totally my life is ruined, and it did completely change my life, but absolutely for the better. There is no words that I can say to really articulate how grateful I am. And Katie is truly the greatest gift. She's been the greatest adventure. Motherhood has been the greatest adventure. And it is something that I just am so passionate about this topic because I think I nearly missed out on that. And that wasn't something that was even offered as an option from those closest to me or from society, that motherhood is an incredible adventure and it hasn't held me back from anything. It's only enhanced my life. I only see my life as richer and fuller because of Katie.
And what about your career?
Oh, it hasn't stopped me at all. So I started university when Katie was 10 weeks old. I did university, I did 2 degrees, I did another vocational studies, I've had my own business. So she's definitely not slowed me down.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My thanks to our guests, Stacey McBride Wilson and Jeanette Harris, for their valuable input today. If you'd like to find out more about Emily's Voice, you can find them on Facebook or visit their website. The federal election's coming up on Saturday the 18th of May, so use your vote wisely. If you'd like to be more than a voter but an actual election influencer, there are 3 easy steps you can take to help elect a government of justice and wisdom without blind loyalty to any party or politician. For more information, visit churchandstate.com.au via the link in the description below. It's time for more of us to become tasty salt and bright light in the public square. And even if you're not interested in politics, know that you will make a big difference following these 3 easy steps. Thanks for joining us.